rom-coms take really beautiful people and then tell us somehow they've never been on a date before. Somehow, no one else has ever found them attractive. Welcome to VoiceOver Movies That Move Us. I'm your host, Heather Bigley, and I talk to people about the movies that made a mark. And sometimes it's not always the movie you'd expect, and sometimes it's not always the mark you'd like. Today we're taking on a whole genre. 'Tis the season to talk about rom-coms. Plenty of folks watch romantic comedies because they can be hilarious, zany, wacky, daffy, delightful. Or that's how it used to be. If you look at the most beloved comedies from before 1960, about half of them are romantic comedies. We're talking about It Happened One Night, My Man Godfrey, My Favorite Wife, The Awful Truth, Bringing Up Baby, The Philadelphia Story, The Lady Eve. The list goes on and on and on. Well, Hollywood changed drastically in the 1960s. First, it got rid of the production code and moved towards the rating system, which allowed a lot of movies to become much more graphic, violent, explicit than those coded movies, as it were. And then in the late 60s, the whole entire industry fell apart, largely because of TV. If you could watch it at home for free, why would you go to the theater? This ushered in New Hollywood and the blockbuster model. And suddenly, movies were aimed at young single men as their main demographic. And this changed the stories that got told drastically. There were just fewer women in movies. There were fewer funny women. And there were just fewer women who spoke. So, my guests and I were youths, though, in the 1990s. And so we decided to talk about our experience with some of the classics of that era. Sleepless in Seattle with Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks, While You Were Sleeping with Sandra Bullock and Bill Pullman, and Notting Hill with Hugh Grant and Julia Roberts. And we threw in two movies from 2025 just as a point of comparison. Eternity with Elizabeth Olsen and Miles Teller, and Materialists with Dakota Fanning, Pedro Pascal, and Chris Evans. My guest today is Shane Sager, who called me from Hawaii. While Shane once worked in the film industry as an assistant director and location manager, he now works with the state of Hawaii in wildfire recovery, with a focus on housing, infrastructure, workforce, and long-term community stability. Stick around after the movie for recommendations. Okay, well, let's talk about the darkness of our 20s.
Holy cow. Yeah. Dark times.
So talk to me about why you were watching rom-coms, what drew you there. What, were you on a date? Or were you like seeking out rom-coms?
So my family, my mother was an avid movie watcher.
Okay.
Like we grew up in the time before Blockbuster, when there were these little tiny shops that would rent you the VCR and the videotapes.
Yes.
And if we weren't doing that, we were going to movies. Oftentimes there were discussions about the movie afterwards with my parents and with my siblings.
So do you remember some of those movies that your mom brought into the home? Because I have a memory, we didn't have a VCR until I was almost in 8th grade, but my grandmother did, and she loved an Elvis flick. And so I remember watching Elvis movies with my grandma when we visited. So
when my grandfather would visit, it was Westerns. And so like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, anything Clint Eastwood was like, it was going to be, we were going to watch it at some point while he was visiting. Ordinary People was brought in, and there was a discussion around Ordinary People. My parents actually were pretty clear about how they understood it was an R-rated movie. I was raised Mormon, so having an R-rated movie brought into the home was not usual.
Yeah.
But the conversation was about what an R-rated movie is and what are adult topics and things like that. And so it was like we had conversations around these things. And the impact of, it was a serious movie, the impact of suicide on a family or death on a family. And so there were a lot of movies like that.
Excellent. So
So,
your mom's introducing you to rom-coms, and then
and I have four sisters.
And oh my goodness.
And I have four sisters, and I have one brother. I'm the youngest of the two boys. I'm basically what equivalent to kind of the middle child. He and I are kind of the middle kids in the family, because there's six of us, and we are pretty opposite of each other. And so it was that. And then when you're dating, in the Mormon scene, when you're dating, you're going to a lot of movies.
So we went through and we picked out a couple of rom-coms. We wanted to make sure we got all the great 90s rom-coms. So, for instance, we have a Sandra Bullock. We have a Julia Roberts. We have a Meg Ryan, right? So what about these three, or what about the rom-coms of the 90s? Like, why zero in on those? Is that because you were dating in your 20s and it was like, okay, yeah, like I remember these and I have a relationship with them?
Can I just say, what is it with 90s rom-coms in Chicago?
I love Chicago. For real. Yeah.
No, I get it. Is Chicago the city of love? Is this something I've missed?
Okay, so let's name them. While You Were Sleeping is in Chicago. Sleepless in Seattle. Until it's not. Sleepless in Seattle. Tom Hanks starts in Chicago and ends up, right? When Harry Met Sally starts in Chicago and then they head to New York. So those are three. I think Chicago functions really well because it's a big city. It's got cool stuff in it. You can imagine a single scene, but it's also a family town, right? In a way that I don't think New York City reads for most of America. New York City reads as it's for singles. And then when you get married and decide to have kids, you're going to move somewhere where you can have the room for them, right? But Chicago allows you to do both. That's what I say.
What Women Want, Chicago.
Oh, that's true. I remember that. Yeah. Wait, what's the one with Jennifer Aniston and Vince Vaughn? That was Chicago.
Oh, what is that one?
And it has Jason Bateman who plays their real estate agent who says,
and to be honest, this is a situation where I would just as soon not take a commission.
It's great. Thank you for that.
I wish I didn't have to, but company policy says I cannot waive that.
It's really the best thing of the whole movie for me.
That's actually pretty funny.
So I've been thinking of this episode as rom-coms ruined me. So
that's interesting. That's an interesting take.
Yeah. So basically, they made me feel excluded. They made me feel like love wasn't going to be possible for me just because of how the films are set up. I want you, because this was your idea, I want you to talk about how you understand rom-coms working. I,
for whatever reason, had this visceral memory of how I think devastated sometimes I felt after watching a rom-com. And so I was like, I think as a genre, rom-coms were like a thing that were difficult for me, mostly because I was with someone else watching them, where I remember sitting there going, this is never going to happen for me. And just feeling so lonely and so alone, and just like, I'm never going to have this thing.
I feel really sad for you because you were probably on a date when you had this realization. And the idea that you would be sitting with someone that potentially you're interested in, and then having this huge feeling of exclusion and like, this isn't for me.
Actually, like this is like memory therapy. Actually, I think I was on a group outing, I think I was sitting on a row with a bunch of young ladies, like probably 2 or 3 of whom that I'd actually been on dates with, but I don't think I was on an actual date, and part of it was, my family, and my parents were only kids, and they struggled with, they struggled having 6 kids because they went from, unless you're in a big family, you do not understand what a big family's about.
Right.
And so they struggled, and then they struggled in their relationship with each other. And it was painful to watch that struggle, I think. By the way, and they're still together, and they've figured it out. After 60 years, they've kind of sorted things out with each other. But just to, like, at that age, in your 20s, and moving towards your 30s, it's just kind of watching that, just going, I don't know if I want that.
So let's talk about what you would have been seeing. I think one of the delights for a lot of people with rom-coms is seeing 2 beautiful people flirt with each other. There's all this like flirtation, but there's nothing graphic. There's nothing torrid, right? These aren't people who are out of control. They may be head over heels, but they're not out of control. Rom-coms take really beautiful people and then tell us somehow they've never been on a date before. Somehow, no one else has ever found them attractive. And we can see how gorgeous they are. And I'm like, well, I'm not that gorgeous. If that's what it takes to fall in love, to be gorgeous, well, it's not going to happen. What else were you seeing that you said?
Growing up, my brother was the handsome one, and I was never mentioned as the handsome one. So it wasn't like you're ugly, but it was never like, you're good looking. It was just like he was good looking.
Yeah.
So perception and lived experience, and then on top of that, my parents chose to adopt 3 kids. So they had 3 of their own, and they opted to adopt what we would be calling immigrants today.
Right.
And each of us were not white. And so in 1970s, 1980s, 1990s Utah, it's very white. This is all to say, I also had issues of being other. Right now, I present the most white out of my other 2 siblings. My sister's Korean, and my brother is like Pakistani and like Romanian mix. Both very handsome and beautiful people, but we grew up in a time when parents said to them, "You will never marry my daughter. You will never marry my son because you're not white." I tried to do everything I could figure out how to be less other. And, and it's weird because at that point I was made fun of by kids my age for my skin color, for my hair color. It's that sense of otherness, and also having a difficulty figuring out who I was interested in, gender-wise. So you put all of those things together in a nice little cruddy box, and watching these movies, it's just like, well, I'm never going to have that. That's never going to be part of me.
So I think it's interesting. We're both watching rom-coms, and for a variety of reasons, we're both feeling like this isn't about me. I can never have that. I mean, when you said what you said to me, I was like, yeah, I fully identify with what you're talking about. I used to make this joke about myself. I watched too many rom-coms where the sarcastic girl got the man. And I didn't realize that if you're going to be sarcastic, you also have to be hot.
I would not be surprised if most men, the reason why most men are relatively dismissive of rom-coms is because they probably see it the same way and feel the same way. Because look, we're just as most men are just as insecure as any woman. We present differently with it. And the truth is now that I look at them, like having like submitted myself to, I think about 10 of them, I don't feel the animosity I don't feel the despair that I used to feel. One, because I actually did get it. It did happen for me. And it weirdly happened in a very kind of interesting, almost rom-com-y way.
So one of the things so we picked Notting Hill, While You're Sleeping, Sleepless in Seattle. One of the things that I actually really loved about Notting Hill and While You Were Sleeping was the group. While You Were Sleeping, Sandra Bullock's character is introduced to this family, and she has this wonderful speech.
It's just when we were in the hospital room, everything happened so fast, and I couldn't tell you the truth. And then I didn't want to tell you the truth because the truth was that I fell in love with you.
You fell in love with me?
No, yes, all of you. I went from being all alone to being a fiancée, a daughter, a granddaughter, a sister, and a friend. I might have saved your life on the tracks that day, but you know what? You really saved mine. You allowed me to be a part of your family, and I haven't had that in a really long time. And I just didn't want to let go of that. So even though it was just for a little while, I will love them always. I'm very sorry.
And so the guy is great and she loves the guy too, but the ability to join a family. And I don't know if that happens a lot in rom-coms. I don't know. It feels like a lot of rom-coms. Let's take Eternity. So Eternity came out last year. I think it's got a lot of interesting stuff in it. I think it could have done more interesting things. But the thing that stood out to me is here are people who have to choose where they're going to heaven, and they don't choose where their parents are. Their children are living their own lives. The advice is just choose what you want for you.
I don't know what to do.
You spent your entire life worrying about other people. Now it's time to decide what's best for you.
And that'll make sure you're happy for eternity.
But it actually pokes holes in itself because what's happening? Like every 20 minutes, there's a red door escape.
Yeah.
Right? Because the eternity that was picked was not eternal happiness.
We get to see people in their eternity making friends and meeting people, so that's good. But I just thought, oh, that's so interesting. It's like, I mean, the mortal equivalent is you graduated from high school and now you're going off to college and you know no one, and good luck, right?
Yeah. Or you graduated from college and you're heading off to a new city to take a job where you don't know anybody in that city and you don't know any in that job other than the person that interviewed you.
Right. Good luck.
Yeah. Enjoy.
Hope you're happy.
Oh, and by the way, you can't call back. You can't call a friend.
Nope.
Because there's no way to.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
I thought it opened up the chance to talk about all these interesting ideas, but then is so wants to be a rom-com. So wants her to end up with one of those fellows. Then I think it short circuits anything that it really could have
and I
done.
think it's interesting. Like they didn't have the courage to go through with it, right?
Right.
Because they put her on the train with her friend.
Yeah.
And then they could not complete. I felt like the choice was obvious.
I feel like because it's a rom-com, the way it's set up, of course she's going to pick Miles Teller. Of course. That's how the movie's set up.
Right, but I think in the real world,
she would pick the one that she had the relationship with for the longest and knew.
The one that she chose every day with. So to me, it's like, wait a minute. Like it made no sense to me that she would even question that she would want to go with the other guy who she hadn't seen for 67 years.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's sweet that he waited, but what's with him? Like he could have had any relationship he wanted. Like in the world of the film, he could have met someone there and moved on and had a great life.
Well, I think one of the things the film is trying to work through you can see that she's trying to make a choice, and she has to decide, am I making a choice to make someone else happy, or am I making a choice to make me happy? Like, that seems to be a theme. So when she's like facing both of them, and they're both sort of saying to her, but you owe me.
Yeah. And it wasn't until Miles Teller's character just releases her and sets her free.
Your hair's different.
Okay, thank you.
No, you never had it like that when we were together.
No, I cut it after.
It suits you.
Larry.
You should go with Luke. Okay? You deserve a shot at that kind of love, honey. That fiery, sparky kind.
I was so happy with you.
I know, but you were happiest with him. It's okay.
Well, but what about you?
Don't worry about me. I'll be in the sun. Knowing you're happy makes me happy. But it doesn't work unless you're happy.
Oh, Larry.
What's that old adage? If you love something, set it free, and hopefully it'll come back to you.
So While You Were Sleeping, for me, was really beautiful because of that. Like, I loved this idea that what she's wanting, yes, she wants the romance, but she really just wants a family, and that the film saw that as important, right? Instead of, making everybody a bad guy, or, making the mother-in-law awful, or whatever we do in these kinds of tropes.
That was, I mean, their willingness to pull her in, was truly remarkable. But it also it was that movie and Sleepless in Seattle, and then actually a lot of these movies that also bring up this whole idea of the disposable boyfriend.
Yeah.
Right. You know, these, and during this period of time, they weren't terrible people. They weren't like abusive. They weren't like, there was like really no reason. They were just boring. Apparently they weren't good enough. And when Mia was watching it, as we watched more of these, like, she's like, I really hate rom-coms now. She's like, because we were watching them in back to back to back, and she's like, this is a terrible idea. Like, these are perfectly fine human beings, and they're just being discarded.
Right. Well, Sleepless in Seattle has that whole theme of like, is it magic? You should know immediately. You should both like just fall in love when you touch each other that first time. I mean, these are literal lines from the dialogue.
He asked me to take a midnight walk on the steel pier. I've probably told you this a million times, but I don't care. Then he held my hand. At one point, I looked down and I couldn't tell which fingers were his and which were mine. And I knew.
What?
You know.
What?
Magic. It was magic.
Magic?
I knew we'd be together forever, and that everything would be wonderful.
You should just feel sparks, and that's how you know true love.
Because the truth is like, those sparks are great, but unless you've been making those choices every day and you're not just relying on those sparks, which we know those sparks are there for attraction first, but you've got to build off of those sparks. But what they never talked about is what happens when your partner farts, or your partner is incontinent in bed with you, or, or gets hurt, or gets sick, or all these other things where the rubber hits the road, where that's the stuff. It's like, can you stick?
Yeah.
Can you stick during that?
I mean, let's just talk about pregnancy, right? Like, when I see the horror stories of what happens to your body and what happens to your relationship with your husband, and this is something we're told everybody should be doing, right? Everyone should like get married and have babies. Yeah. And if all we're relying on are sparks, pregnancy becomes like, a horror show for a marriage in a lot of ways.
All the relationships that I've seen, the people that are willing to continue to communicate and can deal with the hardship as well as the great times in a pretty level-headed way, they're the ones that are going to survive. And they're the ones that have been communicating and realize that relationships are always, it's a daily choice to work together. Because the drift is real. It happens, and happens to the best of people.
Yeah.
And you just have to keep working.
Yeah.
And rom-coms don't really talk about that.
No, it's rare. When I was watching Notting Hill again, I was really impressed negatively by the fact that Hugh Grant's character, what does he know about Julia Roberts' character? She's an actress, and he's seen her in movies. And he's just so gobsmacked by her for the first, I want to say, 3/4 of the film.
Can I help you at all?
No, thanks. I'll just look around.
Fine. That book's really not great. Just in case, browsing turned to buy. You'd be wasting your money. But if it's Turkey you're interested in, this one, on the other hand, is very good. I think the man who wrote it has actually been to Turkey, which helps. There's also a very amusing incident with a kebab, which is one of many amusing incidents.
Thanks, I'll think about it.
Not until she shows up and is crying because there's been this, all these scandalous pictures of her in the newspaper, that they actually start to connect on an emotional level. And even then, it's not that he's sharing anything about himself. And we're talking about this one anyway. I just kept thinking, it's okay that you feel this way about her, but eventually you're going to have a conversation.
I think that there is a hole there. Although Notting Hill, out of all of them, was probably my favorite watch.
Yeah, well,
I probably walked away from that one feeling the most positive. But it is very fantastical. Yes. And also I see him and I go, yeah, I understand why you're so gobsmacked with her. Cause it's like, this is like a fantasy, this beautiful woman who's exuding power and beauty on the screen for millions and millions of people is now in your parlor and rejecting your tea. And, but it's your tea and she's in your room. Yeah. So that's amazing.
Yeah. I think
so. I get it.
Yeah, for me, just noticing like Julia Roberts' dialogue, the first 3 scenes we see her in are yes, yes, no, no, yes, no, right? Like all these one-word answers, and he's just allowed to fantasize about what that means about her, right?
Right.
And what a dangerous space to be in when you're starting a relationship is not talking enough. We watched Materialists. What did you end up thinking about that?
It's really interesting. It's not a rom-com. I don't think we make them anymore. I think we make things that we say are rom-coms, but they're not anymore.
Right. Well, why don't you think we make them? I think there's 17 answers to that, but tell me what you think.
Well, first of all, I should probably retract that. Hallmark and Netflix still make them.
Yeah.
And they're super formulaic, but they're not the blockbuster films that they used to be, right? Because the 3 women that we talked about, Julia Roberts, Sandra Bullock, and Meg Ryan, had huge box office draw. And we don't see any of those movies anymore. I don't know why we don't have it anymore. I think maybe as a society we're a little too cynical to want to spend money on it, other than a streaming service. I think, I don't know. I think just look at our society and just kind of look. I mean, we have these lonely men who definitely, if they were to watch a rom-com, they'd be like, they would be on my camp. That's never going to happen. Right.
This is the thing that I think Materialists did that I really loved, is it returned marriage to its economic foundations. It was like,
yes,
this is about finding a person who is going to provide something for you. And maybe there's spark, but what you're really interested in is, are you going to be able to afford the life that you want to afford? Is this person going to make you look good? Right. And there was something for me that was incredibly refreshing. That's not how I think about my relationship. Those aren't the things that I was looking for when I was dating. But there was something about it that was like, okay, let's just all be honest about what people.
Well, it is certainly way more straightforward from the framing that the matchmakers put around it, right? Because they're the ones that are framing it in this very specific way. Yeah, it's very it's like 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah,
but what's the conflict? What do we see? We see that the matchmaker meets the man who ticks every single box but one.
I don't know if I like you or if I just like the places you take me to.
You like me? When did that happen?
I think when I saw the way you pick up the bill.
I do it really well, don't I?
You do. Just one swift motion. No hesitation, no fear.
Well, I can afford it, so why would I be scared?
You're investing a lot in me, huh?
I just want our dates to be romantic.
How expensive a meal is makes the date romantic.
Doesn't it?
Every single box, including the idea of surgically changing himself to be taller,
right?
To tick those boxes. But the one box he didn't tick was that she didn't love him.
I don't think that you and I are a good match.
Is it because I got the surgery?
No, knowing that just makes me feel like I actually know you.
Then what? It's really hard for me to feel like this is not about the legs.
It's not. When I realized what you had done, it made me feel exactly how I felt about you before.
Which is what?
I'm not in love with you. And you're not in love with me. And there's no amount of money that can fix that.
But we're such a good match. You're exactly what I'm looking for, and I know I can make your life better.
Harry, you don't want to marry me. You want to do business with me, just like I want to do business with you.
But isn't marriage a business deal?
Yes, it is. But love has to be on the table.
And that trumped everything else.
Thanks to Shane for talking to me about all these films. Notting Hill has a lot of problems, but it is funny, and it remains one of my favorite theater experiences. I actually saw Notting Hill for the first time in a Paris movie theater. I was in Paris after college writing, and I'd occasionally scrape together a few francs. This was before the EU was formed, and go see a movie. And I remember sitting in the theater surrounded by people who were laughing and laughing, but I was laughing first. You see, most of those people were reading subtitles. So they would get the jokes maybe 10 seconds after I would. So in the theater, you'd hear me, ha, 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 and then 8 to 10 seconds later, you'd hear everybody else. I think everyone hated me. So, on to some recommendations. I'm going to have to recommend at least one of those movies from before Hollywood changed and stopped making movies for women or with women. So, I want to recommend The Shop Around the Corner. This is from 1940. It's Ernest Lubitsch, who is working in Hollywood with a young Jimmy Stewart, Margaret Sullivan, and Frank Morgan, who you'd recognize as the Wizard of Oz. The movie nods towards the ongoing war in Europe, but it also is taking just as seriously the heartbreaks of the two young people who work in a gift shop in Eastern Europe. And that's the thing about rom-coms, is they take seriously your heartache, while at the same time, they are poking just a little bit of fun, right? They're asking us, how bad is it really? And if it's that bad, what could make it just a little bit worse? If you've only experienced middle-aged Jimmy Stewart, this movie will show you why those studios signed him in the first place. He's young, he's charming, he's full of charisma. And if you don't know, The Shop Around the Corner was later remade in the 1990s by Nora Ephron as You've Got Mail. I want to next recommend another rom-com from the 1970s. I said earlier that Hollywood stopped making movies for women or about women in the 1970s, and this is generally true. But there were occasionally a rom-com, and this one is Annie Hall from Woody Allen. It stars the late, great Diane Keaton, and what you'll see in this film is a mix of her style and big Midwest open-heartedness and his sort of nebbishy self-hatred all tied up in his ego, and the combination is memorable, to say the least. It's also against the backdrop of New York City. It's funny and tender and representative of how much American culture had changed. If in the 1940s and 50s, the rom-com was about getting to kiss the girl and pull her close, well, that had already happened by the end of Act 1, usually, of the rom-com of the 1970s. The rom-com of the 1970s was about making that commitment to have a long-term relationship. And what's a girl got to do to get the commitment, and what's keeping that man from making that commitment? The last film I want to recommend is Strictly Ballroom from 1992. It's an Australian film, and it's the first film directed by Baz Luhrmann, based on material that he had already produced in the theater. It's a dance, musical, sports competition kind of film. Scott Hastings is an experienced ballroom dancer, but his rebellious maverick moves lose him his long-term partner. So he goes to his mom's dance studio and he picks Fran, who is just learning how to dance, to be his partner in hopes of getting to take on the national championships. I mentioned Baz Luhrmann, right? So imagine all of that with excessive, kind of surrealism, satire, and a little bit of grotesqueness. But at the beating heart is still young love. So that's our show today. I hope you had a good time. I'm your host, Heather Bigley. Voiceover is produced by BYU Radio and edited by Spencer Boyer.